we look at the combination of there's really not a lot of new energy capex coming online. And supply chains might be eventually improving somewhat as China opens, but I think the energy side is still problematic. And so we have real world constraints about abundance, basically our ability to have more goods and services cheaply. And then on the other side of that, you know, unemployment is one of the most lagging indicators. So all of the leading stuff happens first. We've already seen now nearly a year now of deceleration in terms of all those leading things. And we're just starting to see it show up in unemployment numbers, but from a very low base, right? So unemployment looks pretty good. And we're starting to see that slowly get a little worse, but from a pretty strong position. And so I think that as we look out, you know, we'll see tighter financial conditions. Unprofitable companies will have trouble raising equity, right? So they're having trouble growing and hiring more people. Very indebted companies will have trouble raising debt, and they might have to lay people off and slow down operations. And so I think that, and then that spirals when you start to get layoffs, you get weaker consumer demand, and then you get poor company performance that can result in more layoffs. And so I think that things that are discretionary in particular face squeezing here, right? So their costs are going up while consumer demand is also weakening. And so I think that can continue spiraling into a recession, and how deep or prolonged it gets then depends on what are policymakers doing, what is happening with geopolitics, right? Is there a ceasefire and maybe, you know, we're kind of, you know, getting some of the gum out of the system, or is that just getting worse, right? There's all sorts of variables that are hard to predict 6 months, 12 months, 2 years in advance. And so that's why you can have a long-term outlook. Like I will say that I think inflation is going to be hot for the better part of this decade. That's a very long-term outlook. But that's still subject to kind of a quarter by quarter analysis of what's happening in rate of change terms, and kind of monitoring that thesis over time. And so it's not like saying, you know, 2 years from now, this is the exact type of recession we're going to be in, or, you know, things like that. We're not bringing a lot of new supply online for natural resources, especially energy, but also more broadly downstream of that, other natural resources. And to some extent, that's how history goes. We have these kind of roughly 15-year commodity cycles. You mentioned Rick Rule. He has that good quote that all, you know, bull markets are all the authors of bear markets, and bear markets are the authors of bull markets. Where, you know, during periods of high prices, that encourages a lot of new producers to come in. Investors want to give them capital, and then they produce a lot of new supply. They eventually overproduce, and there's some sort of demand destruction that occurs. Then you have this supply glut, and so, or, you know, prices collapse, and then nobody wants to put money into the space, and eventually demand keeps creeping up, and we work out that excess supply, and we get higher prices, and the cycle starts anew. So commodities, because you don't control the price of your own product, are inherently kind of a boom bust industry. And it's historically operated on roughly these kind of 15-year cycles. And so we had this period of oversupply, especially in oil. Basically, we tapped into new energy sources. A combination of cheap credit, the willingness by investors to, you know, keep funding companies that were drilling while being free cash flow negative in shale. And so we flooded the market with oil, despite it not being particularly profitable to do so. There's kind of an endless, you know, willingness to destroy capital for the sake of growth. But eventually that ended up not being truly endless. Eventually investors got tired of that. And then you also added ESG concerns and things like that. And then some large pools of capital are in the impression that you know, we're not going to need those resources in 5 years, which I think is way off.
Misguided.
Yeah. And so I think that it's a normal commodity cycle, but then it's amplified by a few things, including how much debt is in the system, like I mentioned before. And so going through the next commodity bull market with this much debt in the system is inherently going to be inflationary, right? So basically, policymakers are going to have trouble reining in demand, and producers are going to have trouble ramping up new production. I think it's going to take time. And right now, the market still is looking at this as somewhat transitory. They're still pricing oil futures out 3-4 years way lower than current prices. I think until the market wakes up and sees that, you know, sure, you know, the latest wars are adding to this problem, but if they see that the underlying problem is deeper than that, the underlying problem is lack of investment, and wakes up and starts pricing future oils way higher and encourages a ton of new production to come online wherever they can, I think this is going to be a problem for a while. And I think we need a lot of solutions for this because it's hard to have real growth without energy growth. And we do live on a finite planet, and we do have, some finite resources. And I think it's going to take a lot of ingenuity to bring a lot of new energy online over time.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
I have bad news for you. If you're not rich by now, you're screwed. And if you're in debt, you're even double screwed. How so, you might wonder? Well, the sad truth is that you're working your whole life to make someone else rich. The mega corporations, the banks, the politicians, everyone is getting richer. They get your money. And what is even worse, they get your time, they get your life. You are not even in a rat race, you're in a financial prison. But what could a solution for you look like? Honestly, I don't know, but I know what a solution for me would look like. It's very simple. I use whatever money I have and I multiply it with 1,000. This could make my life much easier and probably yours as well. If you have $1,000 available and multiply this with 1,000, I believe that this could solve some financial issue for the one or the other. Of course, if you're ugly, you would have to multiply it with much more than 1,000. My name is Markus Dahn, and this is what I decided to do. I decided to 1000x my money. This is not a joke. I know what you may be thinking. What is this guy talking about? How should this work? This is not possible. Well, I made a detailed video where I laid out my plan. And some clever folks might even want to look at this plan and copy it and do exactly what I do. This is just a little hint on the side. You have two options. You leave, you forget what you have seen. You do whatever you're doing and you hope that somehow you get some other results. Good luck with that. Or you click the link below the video. You enter your email address because I'm not showing this to everybody. You at least watch my video on how I plan to 1000x my money. The choice is yours. Make the right choice. Join me. See what a different future you could have. See at least how I intend, how I plan to do the 1000x. So click on the link below, enter your email address, and I see you on the other side. Your Markus Dahn.